hello, everyone, and welcome back to the community of We with Dr. B. I am so glad that you came back and joined me again as I continue discussing the stages of grief. And for those of you that are tuning in for the first time, welcome. I'm so glad that you're here. Welcome to the community. And as you know, the community identifies me or knows me as Dr. B. I am so ecstatic that you have come to learn more about the stages of grief because that's what's going on in our world. Everyone is experiencing this in some shape, some form, and in some fashion. And I just felt it was important to just kind of break down the different stages that Kubler-Ross and Davis felt like or expressed or wrote or discussed about the different stages. And I just wanted to just provide a little more information about what we all experience and begin to understand how to navigate through that. Now for this week, I am discussing guilt. Last week I went over bargaining, the week before that anger, denial, and then the very first week was shock and disbelief. The reason why I'm mentioning all these so you can understand all the other things that you go through in the stages of grief. Please, when you get an opportunity, just take a few minutes and hop onto my other videos and to see and understand the other stages that I've already previously discussed. Now to get back to today is guilt. You say, guilt, Dr. B? Yes, guilt is the companion to bargaining. And companion is what I discussed last week. Bargaining is what I discussed last week. Guilt is the companion. Let's get that right. Guilt is the companion to bargaining. And what that means is that when you get to the stage of guilt, you begin to feel bad about what you experienced through shock or disbelief in some of the things you may have thought or said. When you get to the stage of denial, some of the things you may have thought, said, and did. When you get to the anger stage, some of the things you may have thought, said, and did, and acted upon. And also in the bargaining stage, where you may have been trying to figure out and trying to negotiate something that you want a different outcome, you begin to feel guilty about all of those things that you just experienced. Remember when I said that resilience begins to form, and you're going to need resilience to get through these remaining stages. Now, one of the things that I think is important to keep talking about through each stage is to be present. It is so important to be present and experience what you're feeling, how your emotions are taking you on this roller coaster ride through the stages of grief, because you are experiencing loss. And so that is so important to be present. Community, we have to not always be in the stage of wanting to rush past things to get to the next thing. We need to understand and feel where we are. And that is a part of the healing process. When we are in guilt, and again, that's the companion to bargaining, think about it. When you feel guilty, you really want to not experience that because it doesn't feel good. Any of the stages don't feel good, especially when you've lost a loved one. Now, when you're feeling guilty, you begin to feel bad about choices that you made, things you may have said, or things that you may have done in those choices. In the moment that it occurred, you felt justified because of the emotion that you felt and the stage that you were in during that time. But then you begin to think about what you did and begin to make some sense out of it on this level. And you begin to feel guilty because during those times you may have hurt yourself, you may have hurt others with your words, and you begin to feel guilty because you're going to have to kind of go back and mend those things that you may have done in other stages. And so it's so serious serious when we do that. Because think about it, your heart is just hanging on by a thread because of the pain, the immense pain that you feel when you're going through grief. And to have to go and fix a wrong that you did during this stage, it begins to become too much. But the guilt stage is necessary because it helps you to reflect. Again, while you're reflecting, resilience is still building because it's going to help you to be able, again, to get through these stages, especially in the next stage that's coming after guilt, which is depression. So as this stage of resilience is building in guilt, it helps you to kind of understand where you are. It helps you to kind of make sense of what's happening, to bring more of a reality to what has just occurred, to bring a serious reality check, to bring a serious reality balance to what has happened in your life in this moment, in this stage of grief. Community, we gotta feel these things. Community, we gotta go through these things. Community, be present. Y'all be present to feel these stages for healing. Don't we want to be healed? We don't want to keep going through life and going through all of these griefs, these stages over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. We don't. We don't. But in this stage of guilt, I am asking you, again, think about what you've done, what you said, or how you felt. And begin to make some sense and bring reality to that place of the choices that you made in the previous stages. Bring reality to what your actions have to be or should be or may need to be during this place. And in these feelings of guilt, the reality and the pain in some areas, in some instances, it may even increase. But that's where the resilience comes in, because that resilience is going to undergird you. It's going to kind of keep you from completely, literally feeling like you got to fall to your knees where you don't even have the strength to stand. Because resilience is just the opposite. It's going to give you the strength, again, each week to stand a little bit higher. Still racked with pain. Still experiencing the stages of grief. Still experiencing the loss. Because, again, these are necessary. And we will go through these stages when we've lost someone very dear and near to us. And so when we're going through this guilt and it's bringing a reality to what our situation is and who we may have lost, it is so good that the resilience is building, because sometimes it can make you feel a little off balance because the impact of it is where it's going to hit you the most. And when that impact of what has just happened hits you the most is when the reality of what has happened hits you the most. And it really hasn't even began to sink in to what has happened, but the shock and the understanding and the reality is very evident. It is very clear, and it's happening and it is occurring. And you got to be present in there. Those feelings sometimes are so scary. Those feelings sometimes, it feels like you're isolated, but don't isolate yourself. Even in those feelings of fear, make sure that you are connected with the community, connected with others, so that you can talk through what you're feeling and the guilt that you're experiencing. And I am hoping, and it is so important to pause right here and say, I am so hoping that who you have in your space, that they are mature enough to help you through that and walk you through it. Not tell you what to do, not tell you how to feel, not tell you how to navigate, but be present and allow you to guide and lead, and them being right there with you and walking alongside you. And so, as I come to a close and speaking about guilt, community, we gotta understand again to be present. We gotta understand in this stage of guilt that it is bringing the reality of what is going on. It's bringing the reality of what is happening and what has happened. Now, when you join me next week, community, I am going to talk about depression, because when the reality of this stage of grief has hit us, sometimes it pushes us into a space of depression. And you're going to hear how resilience comes to its highest peak in depression when we're dealing with the stages of grief. Community, I'm so glad that you are joining me week to week as I discuss this, and you're getting a clear understanding of how these stages work and what you may feel going through this. I look forward to you joining me next week as I go dive into depression. And then, guess what? You're going to really see how resilience is built, how resilience is going to show and peak in that stage. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Leave a comment, and I will be sure to respond to it. I look forward to you all joining me next week with the community of we as I go through the stages of grief. Don't forget, continue to build communities of unity on purpose. You all continue to be well, in peace, and stay healthy. And like I always say, unto him who is able to keep us from falling. I'll see you next time.